When I talk to them about making their needs a priority and putting themselves first, nice guys get a deer in the headlight looks. Oh no, that'll make me a bad man. Everybody will disown me. Nobody will like me or want to be around me. I'll be selfish. And I'd tell them, when I look up the word selfish in the dictionary, I want to see your picture. and a better term is healthy self-interest, because if you don't take a healthy self-interest in you, who is? If I don't take a healthy self-interest in me, who's going to?
You mentioned the covert contracts. I think that's a really interesting point around all of this, because really the fabric of society comes around, social contracts with one another. So what is an example of a covert contract, and what should the healthy version of that be? Maybe we can do a little exercise around the two polarities.
Yeah, good question. Okay. Covert contract is one of my favorite parts of the book. And a lot of people tell me the same. I'm gonna sum them up even clearer than I do in the book. And that nice guys tend to operate from three basic covert contracts. Number one is that if I'm a good guy, I'll be liked and loved. And so I'll be a good guy to you, and you'll like me. But the thing is, nobody likes and loves everybody. And where this really can become toxic is where the nice guy uses what I call nice guy seduction, where they interact with a woman and they listen to her talk about her problems, her jerk ex, they'll fix things for her. They'll pay her rent. They'll pick her up and drive her somewhere, all the while, and they'll hide their sexual agenda from the woman, all the while thinking, I do all these nice things for me. You'll like me and want to be my girlfriend. To put it bluntly, I'll hide my sexual agenda from you so that you'll want to get naked with me. It doesn't make sense, but covert contracts rarely make a lot of sense. So that's where often their passive aggressiveness and victim pukes and not so nice behavior can come in, is I'm a good guy, but yet you still don't want to be my girlfriend, or you don't like me or love me, or you bring up faults. Wait a minute, I've got a bank account. Bank account of good things I do. Nobody should ever see fault in me. So there's covert contract number one. And they're all giving to get. They're all if-then propositions. Covert contract number two. If I meet your needs without you having to ask, then you will meet my needs without me having to ask. But the truth is, I can't read your mind. And everything I give you will be more caretaking than caregiving.
What does that mean? Sorry, caretaking.
Caretaking means I'm giving to you what I need to give to you, so I feel good about me. Caregiving is seeing what you might need. You might not need me to solve your problems. You might need, in fact, it's actually kind of condescending to think you do need me to solve your problems. So, and then because I give all this to you, you should read my mind without me ever having to ask, and just know what I need or want from you, and you'll give to me. Well, of course, you can't read my mind. And of course, you don't know there's a covert contract. So I end up being resentful at you and maybe acting not so nice towards you because you didn't keep your end of. See, I got a scoreboard in my living room. I'm keeping track of how much I gave to you and how much you give back. I'm a terrible scorekeeper, and I'm a terrible receiver, and I'm a terrible at asking for what I want. You have to guess. All right. You should know. Covert contract. Can you see how these are messy? And these are at the foundation of everything nice guys do. Covert contract number three is if I do everything right, then I will have a smooth and problem-free life. Now, the problem is nobody does everything right. We're flawed human beings. We're less than perfect. But nice guys tend to think, I do everything right, which makes us really a pain in the ass to be around because we're not very good at taking accountability for when we don't. And so because I do everything right, and again, I've got the scoreboard, my life should be smooth and problem-free. But, life is not smooth and problem-free. So again, all of these are very faulty, neurotic ways of interacting with the world. But the nice guy, number one, doesn't know he's actually operating on covert contracts because they're covert, hidden from him. They're hidden from everybody else. They're hidden from the world. They're hidden from God. But, we think, God, how come you're not giving me the life I want? I did everything right, whatever. To a woman, how come you don't like me? I've done everything right. I'm different than the jerks you complain about. So they're covert from both the nice guy, hidden, secret, unconscious, and they're manipulative as hell. And they're covert from everybody else who might need to know that they're involved in a contract of some sort. And one of the hardest things for nice guys is when I work with them, when I talk to them about making their needs a priority and putting themselves first. Nice guys get a deer in the headlight looks. Oh no, that'll make me a bad man. Everybody will disown me. Nobody will like me or want to be around me. I'll be selfish. And I'd tell them, when I look up the word selfish in the dictionary, I want to see your picture. and a better term is healthy self-interest, because if you don't take a healthy self-interest in you, who is? If I don't take a healthy self-interest in me, who's going to?
So what is a healthy self-interest? Like, what's an example of a man or a woman who has a healthy self-interest?
You asked me earlier, what's my ideal day start out like? Okay. My healthy self-interest got my ass in bed 9:30, 10 o'clock, lights out by 10-ish. Because I know if I'm going to get up at 7-ish, which I tend to like to, I got to be in bed 10:30. I got to be wound down by 10:30. Okay. That's a healthy self-interest. And, for example, when I married my wife, we've been married about 7.5 years, just because of our daily schedules, we tend to kind of go late, eat late, eating at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, getting to bed 10:30 to 11 o'clock at night. And then at 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm exhausted, right? So healthy self-interest, I've worked at doing that different. And it's funny, my wife has kind of followed my example. Now, I don't have a covert contract just because I'm in bed by 9:30. She should be too. But I just go, I'm going to bed now. And, I'll go get in bed. And, over time, funny, she seems like, yeah, I'm ready for bed too. So we're in bed. But I've made that a priority for me. Getting up at 7-ish so I can go do some meditation, do some meditative reading, do my pages, my journal writing, have that cup of coffee, relax in my own quiet space, hopefully have Nala nearby, hopefully her not chasing too many iguanas into the swimming pool. And then, my wife then gets up and, she gets ready and comes down and, we both say, you ready? Right? And so we go take Nala for a walk in the park and throw balls for her and walk 3 loops around the park and come home. My wife does her exercise and goes to the gym and I start my work. That's a healthy self-interest. Realizing, I wanted to be healthy, me hiring a nutrition coach and me counting macros and me now getting my ass to the gym more regularly. Those are all healthy self-interest. Me taking vacation time, me, just earlier today, I had some chats with a couple of my buddies and we're figuring out when we're going to, talk this weekend. Healthy self-interest. I'm making me a priority. So it's just every aspect of life. What do I need to do to nurture me, to fill my bucket, to live my good life? And if I'm nurturing me, filling my bucket, it's likely going to overflow to people around me who are going to be blessed by my making me a priority, because now they get, the benefits of me making myself a priority. And then I can choose how I make them a priority in my life. And sometimes they become a higher priority because they need to be. But I always have to get back to the default mode of myself as the highest priority. For a while today, the iguana was a higher priority just because I didn't want that iguana to drown at the bottom of my swimming pool, because I felt bad for the iguana and I didn't want to have to fish a dead iguana out of my swimming pool either. So it was the highest priority. And it was just actually 35 minutes before I was going to get on this call. And I knew I still needed to take a shower and shave and you get dressed and be ready for the call. But the iguana became the highest priority for a short amount of time. And so got that worked out. Then I went back to making me the priority and I shaved and showered and got dressed and made it on the call. So that's some of the ways it just looks like it. It's not rocket science.
On this note of the mindfulness practices that, may potentially be Buddhist led, but there are many different frameworks that are used across the globe.
Many different. Yeah.
What value do you see in some of these practices for, like meditation, yoga, journaling? You've mentioned you've done some for the nice guys and for people who want to understand kind of cues when it comes to dating and developing relationships. Like, what value do you see in it? What examples do you have of some good practices to take, and what's an indicator that you're starting to get it?
Well, there's about 3 or 4 questions in there. You know what? I'll just kind of like, maybe this is kind of a reverse engineering of your question. I don't know that I can tell you what I get out of daily meditation. I don't know that I can tell you what I get out of reading, good stuff around mindfulness, or listening to Anthony DeMello, or reading Thich Nhat Hanh, or my morning pages from, The Artist's Way. I don't know what I can tell you what I get out of taking my dog for a walk every morning. I just know that when I don't do those things, my days start feeling overwhelming, not particularly fulfilling. I'm not enjoying my life as much. I just get caught up and swept away, and I'm not living very intentionally. And I'm not taking the time to love myself, to enjoy some solitude, to take a siesta. I'm glad I live in a culture that honors a siesta. But if I'm not making those things a priority, I just don't take siestas. I just work through stuff. So what I do know is that I try to live, the term I use is my sweet spots. I try to live my life as much as I can in my sweet spots. And when I don't live in those sweet spots, I feel it. I don't get enough sleep. I'm tired. I get edgy, get critical, get demanding, hurtful, demeaning. I'm just not happy. And I generally trend towards happiness in general. So I've just found, I can't say, well, my meditation does this.
Yeah.
Or the writing those morning pages does that. Or talking to my men's group does this. I've just learned those are my sweet spots. And just kind of an example is today, you were my first thing on my calendar at 1:00 in my afternoon. And I've known for a long time that's my best day, for I don't have anything on my calendar till 1 in the afternoon. And then I might go well into the evening. But that's just kind of how I work best. And lately, since, I started building and launched my men's membership program, and I have a lot of meetings I have to be on Zoom. I've been doing a lot of interviews lately, probably 8 this week. A few weeks ago, I had 11. That's a lot of time during the day.
Yeah.
That's not a sweet spot. I love doing interviews, but 1, maybe 2 a day is my sweet spot. And so sometimes I learn the hard way. All right, 3 interviews in a day, I'm exhausted afterwards and probably not at my best. So today, when I saw my calendar that I didn't have anything till 1, it reminded me that's my sweet spot.
Yeah.
And it felt good. So my wife's out of town this weekend. I got up at 7, did my meditation, did my morning pages, took Nala for the walk, got home, got into the gym. That's a sweet spot. I found out I got my workout in. I was actually enjoying my smoothie when I had to go rescue the iguana from the pool. But even that was a sweet spot that I had. I was sitting and enjoying the beauty of where I live, and all of a sudden this green flash goes and my dog's chasing it into the pool. So, but that's the sweet spot. Now today I'll have a client after you. I'll have another interview later today. I'll wrap my day up with around 6:30, and I'll just go, okay, that's been a good day. Mainly because I consciously lived in my sweet spots. And the more I do that, and the less time I stay out of what's not my sweet spots, the better I just tend to do. The more full my bucket seems to be, the more happy and optimistic I am. So that's the best answer I can give you, is when I don't do the stuff that I know sets my day up well, I pay a price, because what happens is that starts becoming the norm, not the exception. It becomes the rule to not do those things. Now, it's okay if I occasionally don't do my meditation or the pages or miss walking the dog, but it better be the exception, not the rule. And it better not happen more than 2 or 3 times in a row, or that's problematic. And I've just learned that over time.
I fundamentally agree with you on, the meditation, the journaling, the morning pages I've been on and off doing for a number of years, and it is extremely impactful.
When you're more on than off, it makes a difference, doesn't it?
It really does. Yeah, it compounds. I think the core of this is there's lots of little things that individually have small impacts, but together they are very, very powerful.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. You heard of like death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah,
well, it's just the opposite.
Cuts.
So this is life by 1,000 little things that keep us in our sweet spot.
Life by 1,000 flowers. I don't know.
We'll have to work on this one. We'll workshop that one. We're not there yet. We'll work on it.
There's a good idea there. Yeah, for sure. So going back to, all the nice guy stuff and kind of getting more of an understanding, would you say that there's value in this sort of work for those people who are chronically nice guys or chronically, people pleasers that have issues around, relationships and understanding, subtle cues of humans and that sort of stuff? What value have you seen from your experience in this sort of modality?
Yeah. Well, great value. Otherwise, you and I wouldn't be talking 20 years after my book was published, 20 plus years.
Yeah.
People sometimes ask me, when do people tend to find what I teach, my books, or, find me on YouTube or take one of my classes or something. And most often is when they're struggling. And usually, not always, but often struggling around relationship. It may be a young man that has no clue how to talk to women. It might be a 25-year-old that's never had a girlfriend, never had sex. It might be somebody who's had relationships, but they always seem to go south in a big hurry. It might be somebody who's had a long-term relationship or two, but they're going through just really difficult times, or maybe even a breakup. So it is often when guys are struggling around relationship that they go looking for answers. Whether how do I get laid? How do I talk to women? How do I deal with my wife who's angry at me all the time and never wants to have sex anymore? How do I handle getting over a divorce? Whatever it is, men go looking for answers. That's one thing about us guys. Again, men do buy self-help books, men do watch podcasts, but we often go looking for answers after the fact, late. Yeah. But we don't know to look for answers before we have the problem, right? Yeah. We don't know that what we're doing might become problematic. So that's when a lot of people find me. And as I said, I get countless emails and messages from people saying, Robert, I've read every self-help book out there. Your book was the one that truly spoke to me. Your book really was the one that made sense as to why things weren't working well for me. And it's not that I'm all that brilliant or all that genius, but I am a recovering nice guy. And so I wrote about my own experience. I tell people, no more Mr. Nice Guy is autobiographical. I just use other nice guys to tell my story. And, and I've worked with nice guys for 30 years. So I get it. And I am a nice guy, and I make all the nice guy mistakes, and I've learned everything the hard way. And so what I find is that once people understand this basics around like covert contracts, around trying to get approval, around, hiding themselves, once they learn to start making their needs a priority, work at being honest, work at connecting with men, because most nice guys will report they don't have a lot of guy friends, don't trust men. They seek validation from women. Mm-hmm. So once they start doing really some of these basics, finding safe people to release their shame to, they start seeing dramatic changes quickly. All of a sudden, they get bolder. They take risks they wouldn't have taken before. People start responding to them differently. Women start liking them. Women start getting naked on first and second dates when they could never, get a woman. Things start happening. They start giving a few less fucks about everything that their girlfriend or wife is pissed off at them about. They start being more differentiated and asking themselves, what do they want, and reconnecting with their buddies, and, letting their wife or girlfriend be angry at them. And then their wife in anger starts going, he's actually kind of sexy when he doesn't grovel so much, Yeah. They start just seeing things different. But I tell you what, there does seem to be a real core dynamic here, that the really big game changer, what puts everything on steroids and moves it forward, is usually getting into some kind of men's group. Going to a workshop with men, some kind of men's program, men's retreat, men's weekly group. I did most of my nice guy recovery years ago. It started in a 12-step group that was all men, and then later joined a men's group around sexual shame that I was in 5 or 6 years. And that's the time that I wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy. And then like 7, 8 years ago, about 7 years ago, I'd moved to Mexico. I'd gotten married. My wife and I were having some struggles in our first year of marriage. I was feeling isolated, disconnected. I went looking and luckily found me a men's program that I was in for 5 years. And it was transformative. It connected. It continued the work that I'd begun 30 years ago. And so it's like I've never gotten over this need to have a community of men. So I still have several communities of men that support me and hold me accountable and are there for me. So I'm a really big fan of, to really make this shit work and keep it working, we need community. We need community with men, as I said, to support us, to hold us, to confront us, to keep us accountable, to challenge us. And that's when this stuff really, really takes off.
Have you read the book, The Way of the Superior Man?
Let me see, maybe 27, 35 times. Yeah, I discovered Way of the Superior Man 2 or 3 years after my second divorce. So I was in my late 40s, maybe pushing 50. And I remember several of my clients had mentioned it several times. I thought, well, that's kind of a weird title, kind of a weird name for the author. And so for whatever reason, I put off reading it. And finally, I started reading it. And I remember I was dating a woman at the time, and I said, this book is amazing. This is my new Bible. And I said, this is a great companion book to No More Mr. Nice Guy. They're very different books. But, you would not believe how many interviews I'm on that mention No More Mr. Nice Guy and Way of the Superior Man, in tandem. Yeah. And so, I've read it. Probably a minimum of 30 times. I've done a few workshops with David Data. The men's program that I've been in for the last 6+ years is with a guy named John Wineland, who has studied with Data for over 15 years and probably the heir apparent of David Data. So David Data's works had a big impact on me as well. And so I'm very grateful for that. I have heard of that book. and I do recommend it. I highly recommend it.
It was a game changer for me when I read that before I read your book. And I remember just reading that book and going, wow, it makes so much sense now. Yeah. And the really key thing that you've been talking about here, and I think it's very, as you said, they have similarities in the masculine feminine dynamic. I think that's the core thing that really is similar in them both, and how you were speaking before about attraction, etc. The feminine understanding, the understanding that feminine people flow with their emotions was probably one of the most impactful things I learned.
How about that?
Where you're like, wait, so you don't have to. I couldn't believe it. Like I didn't think it was true when I first read it, but the idea that you don't have to solve these emotional problems when they arise, and most of them go away on their own.
Well, as I heard David say in a workshop years ago, and he talks about masculine and feminine, and talks about men and women. He conflates the two at times, which can be confusing because we all have a masculine and feminine side. Our feminine side is an empty bucket with a hole in the bottom that needs to be filled from the outside. And our feminine side feels everything it feels deeply. Our masculine side is non-needy, and it's just okay, what needs to be done, let's do it. Let's do it masterfully. Let's rest in nothingness. They're very different energies. And in a feminine identified body, David says women are the weather. And I remember just hearing that going, oh, that explains a lot.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Like you say, it's kind of simplistic, but even the feminine in me is the weather. Just like 3 days ago, today is Friday. So I had a call with my group of men on Wednesday. And I woke up Wednesday morning just feeling sad. For no real reason, just an existential sadness. And I talked about that with my group of men on Wednesday afternoon. And, they could all relate to that in various moments just felt a deep disconnect. I think it may be a spiritual issue, a disconnect from source, from the oneness, being in this human form. It may be epigenetic. It might be, trauma. I don't know. I couldn't relate it to anything other than sometimes I wake up feeling sad. And I talked about it and like hit the gym later and worked out 3 days in a row, and I haven't felt sad since. Okay, so it came and it went, but I didn't try too hard to figure it out. I didn't try to fix it. I just talked about it. I felt it, let it be, didn't try to chase it away. And, I felt really up and optimistic for 3 days since I actually let myself feel it and talk about it. So that was just my feminine having feelings that may come and go. So yeah, it is nice to know that. And a practical application. I started doing relationship therapy 40 years ago. And again, I bumbled my way through 3 marriages and we're all just bumbling our way through. But I would say, as a marriage therapist, the number one thing couples fight about, men and women, this would be true in any relationship, because almost every relationship, whether it's straight, gay, lesbian, there is usually an identified masculine pole and an identified feminine pole. There's a pitcher, there's a catcher, there's a top, there's a bottom. And ironically, I think gays and lesbians understand that better than straight people. Right? Yeah. We straight people who kind of grown up with this kind of feminist, proposition that, we're all the same. There is no gender. It's a social construct. We just flow between, I don't believe that's actually true. And I don't believe there's a gay man on the world that believes that, or a lesbian woman that believes that. They know in a relationship, you need a top and a bottom. You need a doer and a done to. And that's okay, right? There's no right or wrong, good, bad about that. But we straight people, especially the younger you are, go, we're all the same. And how boring is that? If you think about it, if you have no polarity in sex, if you don't have a top and a bottom, a pitcher or a catcher, you have 2 bodies lying next to each other waiting for something to happen. That's pretty boring sex. And it's actually pretty boring relationship stuff as well. Okay, so if we accept there's a polarity, and I love how John Wineland, my coach, talks about that masculine feminine polarity. He'll break it down for our physical body, our emotional body, our sexual body, our spiritual body, can lean more one way or the other towards our masculine feminine polarity. And that plays out differently in our relationships with friends, with the opposite sex. So here's what I found people fight about, probably in most relationships. The more feminine identified person makes an emotional statement. You don't love me. You never say you love me. I hate you. And the more masculine identified person goes, what the fuck? That's crazy. and starts arguing the facts of that emotional statement. Of course I love you. I show you, I love you all the time. Look, you're flying first class. You're wearing Lululemon. You can get it. That's my argument. What do you mean I don't love you? So when the feminine identified pole in the relationship, makes the emotional statement, and the more masculine identified pole, starts arguing the facts. What happens is the feminine identified person is going, I feel unheard, unloved, and unvalidated. This is terrible. He's an asshole. And the more masculine going, she's fucking batshit crazy. And so when I talk to men, usually more in their masculine identified, they go, so what do you do with that? How do you know that they've just made an emotional statement? And I go, well, 2 ways. One, it sounds batshit crazy to you. That's how you know it was an emotional statement. If it was actually a rational, factual statement, you'd go, I think her facts are wrong, but I see where she's coming from, right? No, you go, that's fucking Looney Tunes. How can she even feel or think that, right? And I said the second way you know it was an emotional statement is you want to argue the facts. Right? You're bringing up the this and that because she's probably already said it's never or always or, I hate you or you're the biggest asshole on the planet. And it's an emotional statement, right? Those are all emotional statements. And we're going, I'm not the biggest asshole on the planet. Let me prove it to you, Yeah. So it's good to know about that polarity and just how we kind of interact with the world differently.
Yeah, definitely. It has changed the way I view a lot of things, and it changed the way I view my internal interactions as well, which we were speaking about. So,
between your own masculine and feminine poles inside of you, sure.
Yeah, and there's a follow up kind of thought that I'm trying to work through with the homogenization of masculine and feminine polarities.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's what it is, right? And it's funny. I'm seeing, like, I'll go on TikTok and you see a lot of these comments of mainly women saying, "Where are all the good men?" And
we've feminized them all. That's where they've all gone.
That's the thing. So, and then there's people now. There's now a lot of pushback. But the question is,
what are you doing on TikTok, listening and watching that stuff? You're part of the problem. Right?
I love it. I find it very curious, because what ends up happening is, like, you get a wide understanding of the heartbeat of the culture through those social media platforms.
No doubt.
Like, that's the core of it. But
you find out how fucked up we really are.
Yeah,
on those
honestly, we are, and we're quite lost. So I wonder, is there a way to, I think the feminist movement came with good intentions. I think at the core of it. Now,
I agree.
It's gone in a direction that maybe there's always externalities and second, third order consequences that 99.9% of people don't see, and we're now beginning to see that. So, from your experience and understanding on all of this and working with a lot of people, what do you think, is there a path that you can see where we can begin to bring back the masculine feminine dynamics in a healthy way without destroying the equitable society, work for men and women on, in corporate and other elements? Or is it always going to be an imbalance, and that's just that?
Here's my opinion. Well, everything you've gotten so far is my opinion. I'll just take it.
Of course.
Okay. Here's what I see, because I've been seeing this for a while. Like I said, I grew up during the angry feminism, the 60s and 70s. My mother was she never probably would identify as a feminist. She didn't burn her bra, but she was probably a pre-feminist for a few things. One is that, she raised her children, but when I was about 12, she went into the work world and she rose up. She had a successful career by the time she retired. So she did become very career-oriented, very intelligent woman. She raised her sons to not be entitled assholes like their father, to not be, that patriarchal kind of point of view. Mm-hmm. She raised her daughters. So she had two boys and two girls, 4 kids in the family. She raised her daughters to be self-sufficient and not need a man. Without really knowing, kind of that became core, feminist principles. Mm-hmm. And so, I learned to cook, to clean, to sew. I've sewn clothes on a sewing machine before. I've done hands. I haven't done any of this in 50 years probably, but I learned how to, and I'm glad I can take care of myself. I can cook my own meals. I can clean my own house. When I was dating in my 40s and 50s, women would come to my apartment and they'd look around, they'd walk around and touch things, the carpet, the colors, the candles, the smells, the furnishings, the artwork. They go, "Did you do this yourself?" And then they go, "Is it always this clean?" Yeah. So I'm glad I can take care of myself. I also learned hire house cleaners.
That's a big one.
So, and then when feminism came along, I was, the demands of, equal pay for equal work and, equal rights and opportunity and treatment for everybody, whether we're talking about, the racial revolution or, feminism. Yeah, of course they all made sense. Mm-hmm. Now, almost in any revolution, it almost has to get radicalized to make a difference. Otherwise people don't pay attention. Right. So, they both, whether it's things around race, whether it's things around gender, then in maybe later years, things around sexual orientation, they had to get radicalized to make a difference. Mm-hmm. And so what happens, they go from this extreme and they swing over to the other side of the pendulum. They get extreme over here on this side. And now maybe we're in a period of, everything's toxic masculine, everything's woke, everything, we're over here. There is no gender. There's as many genders as there are people on the planet. Gender is just a social construct. We've swung way over here. Now, our kind of human logic thinks, the pendulum needs to come somewhere back in the middle. But I don't go that method. I think, okay, this is probably a toxic extreme over here. This is a toxic extreme over here. I don't know where the tipping point is between two toxic extremes. What we have to do is we have to bring our discourse and how we view things to another level. So, yeah, I think we've swung way over here. I don't think we're going to swing halfway back and find an equilibrium, which is good. I think we'll actually start having different kinds of discussions, like you and I are having, a different kind of discussion. Maybe people talking to each other that haven't been talking to each other, getting curious about each other's point of view, letting go of, this may sound odd, letting go of some of our fundamentalism. It's funny how this was fundamental over here. Patriarchy, fundamental Christianity, fundamental religion, just fundamental, here's how, and now we've got a new fundamentalism that, no, this is right. Whether it's coming out of woke or how we speak to each other or microaggressions, now we've gotten fundamental over here and rigid, right? And with just the same amount of anger and venom and hurtfulness that was over here. So we can't find a middle. We have to come to a new plane, a new understanding.